Stunning. I love the word fat. If you say I'm fat, I'm not offended by that. Fat to me is a description. I'm proud to be fat.
Julianne Watasic has come a long way. Overweight since childhood, she remembers being told to cover her body starting at age 8.
You're fat, you do not let that show. Hide it, hide it, hide it.
But a few years ago, she hooked up with this group, the National Association to Advance Fat Acceptance, or NAFA. Members here are encouraged to look in the mirror and embrace what they see. At first,
it was so uncomfortable. And 6 months later, I'm like, do.
Instead of weigh-ins, NAFA has yay-ins.
I yay ravishing.
I am halfway between sexy and lovely.
Oh, I yay sexy.
Jeanette DePatty is the group's fitness advisor. After embracing her size, she became a fitness instructor. Her video is called The Fat Chick Works Out. Why the name?
Wow, that exercise instructor is fat. Well, yeah, I am.
But she decided not to let it stop her.
I had been feeling very much like my life couldn't start until I reached a certain size. And then one day I realized I might never reach that magic number.
I haven't always been fat. I was actually a regular-sized little girl, and when I was 17, I was actually diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Since then, taking insulin and treating my diabetes regularly, I slowly became fatter and fatter. When I began to gain weight, I was a little worried. My mother was a little worried, but as time went on, I became okay with being fat. Fat acceptance is the radical notion that fat people are human beings and deserve respect.
You need to kill yourself.
Shitty and I only like anal.
No! Kill yourself. Die today.
I don't equate thinness with like ultimate happiness or...
I don't either, but I don't equate obesity with healthiness either.
You just said healthiness, but I said happiness. Like, that's not even the same thing. I realized that I had to uncouple happiness and thinness because I was wasting my life. I will not wait to live my life, and I will assert that I am a worthy human being.
Somebody who says that they're happier than they've ever been, you sure cry a lot.
One of the topics on the agenda is Fat Pride. Organiser Kat Pawsey says it's a chance to discuss this country's fat phobia and ways to address it. In what way do you think that New Zealanders are fat phobic?
Well, I think what we find when we look at it across the world is that most cultures, especially Western cultures, are very fat phobic. We are fearful of fat and oftentimes even hateful of fat.
But that's, in essence, what we're told, isn't it, by doctors and medical professionals, that in order to live a long and healthy life, we need to keep the kilos down.
It is definitely what we're told. We accept a range of diversity in terms of heights and hair colors and skin colors, but for some reason when it comes to body size, we're very specific that there are only certain sizes that you are supposed to be or allowed to be.
What's socially supposedly accepted in terms of a person's size or a person's figure, particularly with women, there is very much a health issue, though, that is attached to it as well. Would you accept that?
Weight is not a good predictor of health. I think that if we want to talk about health, we can talk about health, and I think it is important, but I don't think weight is a good proxy to do that.
Shut the fuck up, you cunt!
Do you know what my passion is? My passion is...
eating. I think if you have to pay these days for a 15-kilogram piece of luggage, why the hell aren't you paying for the 15-kilogram that you are draping around your arms, your waist and your arse?
And that's why, as an employer, I have to be honest and say I would never employ someone of your size.
The trouble is, it would appear...
No. You know people have this opinion, which you admit.
Yeah, I know
and so
this.
why don't you think, well, you know what, if I am going to compete, if I am going to get myself off benefits, which I really want to,
but you wouldn't ask someone of a
change?
different... And just because I weigh more than a certain person, I'm not getting a job, and that should not be allowed.
But the answer to that sits with you.
And that's just greed.
Well,
Okay.
you're a perfect example of greed, Sweet Pea, because you weigh 25 stone.
You're doing a documentary, aren't you, about putting weight on?
Yeah, so I put on 4 stone to prove that skinny people aren't lucky to be skinny. They just move around a lot, and that fat people are, in fact, lazy.
People have different metabolisms, that's what I'm saying.
Well, if your metabolism is really slow, then maybe you need to shove less in this end so that you don't get fat.
I'm here today to talk to you about a very powerful little word. One that people will do almost anything to avoid becoming. Billion-dollar industries thrive because of the fear of it. And those of us who undeniably are it are left to navigate a relentless storm surrounding it. I'm not sure if any of you have noticed, but I'm fat. Let's not sugarcoat it. I am the elephant in the room.
I went swimming last summer for the first time in years. I was so proud of how happy I felt in my new swimsuit that I took a selfie and posted it on Tumblr. The next morning, I had an anonymous message waiting for me. You have one of the worst bodies I have ever seen. You're just a giant mushy blob. As someone who swims 6 days a week, seeing people like you in the pool puts me off food and makes me swim twice as much. You are truly disgusting to look at. And before you blame a medical condition of some sort, you don't get that huge without seriously overeating, so don't kid yourself. My response was something along the lines of, LOL, and yeah, I do eat a lot. Food is delicious. Food is delicious.
We are going to take a trip down the left anterior descending coronary artery of a man of 58 who suddenly dropped dead from ischemic heart disease. If we go yet further down, we now get into high-grade stenosis. You can see the vessel lumen here is much reduced in size. It's reduced in size by the presence of this rather large plaque over here. And it contains a fair amount of lipid. The lipid is beginning to get rather sort of crumbly, and you can see that it's beginning to break up at that point.
But because I'm supposed to be an inspiration, maybe not to the masses, but to a few, those few who have commented, emailed, messaged, told me that I inspired them to love their bodies, they're important to me. I don't want them to know that I still have days where I think my life would be better if I was skinny. I don't want them to know about those nights where I still cry because I feel disgusting. I want to be a beacon, not a disappointment. But those days do happen, and the messages keep coming, so I've had to learn how to fight back. Ignore them, be flippant, turn it into an opportunity for activism. My favorite part of this lovely message is where they said, before you blame a medical condition. They have anticipated this excuse because I am not unique in being the object of their disgust. I am not special. I am the 5th, 10th, 42nd, 100th fat person at which they have spit their hatred. Fat people who, let me remind you, have done nothing more than post pictures of themselves in all their fat glory and said, hey, I look good. And don't you dare think this anonymous piece of shit is unique. Any fat person who loves themselves loudly, verbally, textually, visually, has stories of abuse, oppression, and violence to fill their own Library of Alexandria, and we know how it feels to be burned to the ground. That is why being fat and standing up and saying, I don't hate myself, is a revolutionary act. Being fat and wearing bright colors and tight clothes and horizontal stripes is a revolutionary act. Is a revolutionary act.
The hardline leadership of Nicolae Ceausescu, who had gunned down his own people to stay in power, finally folded.
Is a a revolutionary act.
After weeks of scenes like these across the country, resulting in dozens dead, it appears to be the end for Tunisia.